engines. Pull those belts down tight one more time, warm up those tires, hit your marks, and let's go racing, boys and girls. Nascar, Indycar, Formula One, Formula E, and NHRA Racing Talk. This is the Championship Racing Network. Now here's your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson, with producer John Myers.
And I'm the only one in the studio. We'll be joined by Coach Matt here in just a moment by phone, and we've got a couple of really big stories that we're going to kick off with, because I really want to kind of go back and forth with him on those two. Got an IndyCar team that's undergoing a major change at the very top, too. We're not just talking about drivers. I mean, we get silly season, but yeah, this time it's higher than that. IndyCar is also bringing in a charter system. We talked about that on the podcast. We'll kind of dig into that a little bit more. Got a driver change in Formula One that takes effect immediately that we're also going to talk about. NASCAR has made a move regarding tickets, and, well, we're just going to say that this is controversial. How's that? That work? We got big stories to talk about, and we're going to get into it next. Again, Coach Matt by phone for the first couple of segments, and then me solo. Do I apologize now or wait?
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Four tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in. I am Steve West. I'm the one in the studio. Coach Matt, if I did my job right, is on the phone and can hear me. So the question is did I do my job right?
I can.
Oh, hey, fantastic. What do you know? All right, so I'm actually going to bury the lead here because I'm going to lead off with what we did on Cross Flags on Wednesday. When we got together, we thought, truth be told, that the biggest news of the week was going to be the IndyCar charter system, which has been approved. Everything's ready to go. They came to terms on this. It's kind of akin, for the most part, to what NASCAR's done with the Cup Series, with an IndyCar twist, if you will. 10 incumbent team owners, they've accepted charters for 25 entries. This is effective starting for the 2025 racing season. A chartered entry will, in short, be guaranteed a starting position in all races in the IndyCar season except for the Indy 500. There are no guarantees there. In addition, the leader circle's still there, and to be part of that, you must have a charter. That's kind of one of the little tricks there. The Leader Circle, just to remind you, it's an annual awards program. It gives money out to the top 22 finishers of the prior year's final standings. This particular charter system runs through 2031, limits teams to a maximum of 3 cars per team. They can have fewer, but they can have no more than 3. The teams with 3 charters will be, right now anyway, Andretti Global, Arrow McLaren, Chip Ganassi, Rahal Letterman Lanigan, and Team Penske. You got AJ Foyt, Dale Coyne, Ed Carpenter, Juncos Hollinger, and Meyer Shank. They were allotted 2 charters each. And the owners seemed pretty much in line with how this all went. Couple of quotes here. Quote, "I appreciate the efforts made by IndyCar and Penske leadership groups, as well as the owners, to get this charter system started. It's incredibly challenging to get a large group of owners to agree on something, and certainly there was some give and take, but in the end, I believe this is the path that is beneficial for all the owners and for IndyCar, while also maintaining the availability for open competition." That was Larry Foyt of AJ Foyt Enterprises. Chip Ganassi said, "When you look at the modern era of IndyCar racing, you will look at a few important moments, the first being the unification of the sport, the next being Roger Penske buying the IndyCar series and IMS, and I truly believe the third will be this charter system." And then Ed Carpenter said this, quote, "We are very pleased to begin this new era. The process has been very thorough, but in the end, very exciting. This charter system will clearly strengthen our teams as we continue to grow the sport. I'd like to thank Roger Penske, his entire team at IndyCar. ECR will have announcements soon." Yeah, we're going to get back to that. I don't know whether they would be possible without the help of a program like this. With this groundbreaking development, new TV deal with Fox, the momentum that we've been building, IndyCar's future is very bright. And even Michael Shank of Meyer Shank Racing said this, quote, "The charter agreement is, to me, the most single important piece for the future of the series. I'm grateful that we all came together on this. Thank Roger Penske Group for working with the team owners and getting it done." We don't know right now. I mean, we presume that the charters could probably be sold from one team to another, like they can do in NASCAR in the Cup Series specifically. But they didn't really detail that particular part of it, Matt. But in this particular situation, knowing what we know as far as how much a Cup Series charter is going for, minimum $20 million, automatically this pretty much takes on a pretty big value, doesn't it?
Well, one would think that it would. You're really not going to know for sure, in my opinion, until you see the first sale or purchase of a charter from another team takes place.
Sure.
When you'll really know that value. But, one would think that would be pretty valuable. I mean, if a Cup charter is on average 20 to 25 million,
Oof.
Realistically, I would think that an IndyCar charter would be, I would say, no less than 7.5.
Yeah, I was thinking somewhere around, give or take the $10 million mark. I mean, I get it. It doesn't cost as much to put an IndyCar car out on the racetrack as it does a Cup Series car. So, yeah, if you're going by that number, I would say you're probably right in the ballpark. It's going to be interesting to see, because we know, for example, the newest team, Prima, they've got Callum Ilott coming in. We're still waiting to find out who the other driver is. It's going to be very interesting to see if they're going to go out there and try and do this. And we also don't know this. While those charters have been allotted right now, we don't know, for example, how soon, if at all, IndyCar is going to allow these teams to start selling a charter.
Hopefully, for the way I think, hopefully for the sake of the series, in my opinion, I would think that they would need to be pretty tight on that to let this system for them evolve out like it needs to, and not start, I guess you could say, not start a monopoly on selling charters and teams trying to profit and make money just off charters alone.
So,
I mean, it's a fair way to say it.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think of another way to put this then. How long would you give it if you had control of IndyCar? I mean, I think one season, go through the first season, certainly, and that makes a heck of a lot of sense to me. But in the end, is one season enough, or do you want it to go 2? If you were in charge of IndyCar, how long does that moratorium go?
I would say minimum 2.
2 years. Okay.
Minimum.
All right.
Minimum 2.
All right. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. Again, you want it to kind of set. It's like laying down that, concrete or cement or whatever it is. You want it to set before you start walking on it. You certainly don't want these teams to go running away with this. And, if you happen to have a situation where you find a team is having financial trouble, I guess you could probably figure out an alternative. But at this point in time, right now, these 10 teams seem to be pretty solid. We'll worry about it later.
And when you look at the breakdown of who has the acquired charters and the amount of charters that they have,
sure.
I mean, looking at it from a sense of, in the scenario of that what we're talking about here with if it changes hands, you could look at it and legitimately say that the 2 charters that Dale Coyne has could be first 2 charters that could possibly be sold off.
Yeah, at this point in time,
like Prima, I could see somebody like Prima coming in and snatching them up, saying, "Hey, we'll buy those charters for $18 million."
Yeah,
boom, there you go.
Yeah, and Dale Coyne's going to be the interesting one to watch, because we thought for a while that Dale Coyne was, especially when he partnered in with Rick Ware. I mean, it raised eyebrows, but it obviously did seem to help on both sides. I mean, we actually saw Rick Ware, starting to run up front. But at the same time, we're looking at this and thinking to ourselves, okay, wait a minute. Why is Dale Coyne suddenly backing off? I mean, last year we were talking about how he was very uncertain as far as who his drivers were going to be. It was changing on an almost weekly basis, it seemed. I understand why Dale Coyne is having, situations here, and, we don't know exactly what the problem is, but we're going to have to find out, and he's going to have to figure it out pretty darn quick here, because you got a couple of teams out there, Prima being one of them, saying, hey, listen, we are willing to come into the series and do it on a full-time basis right off the bat without really a safety net, with, I think, the thought that, here in a year or 2 years or whenever IndyCar actually allows charters to be sold, or leased anyway, from one team to another, that they've got a chance to be able to go out and get at least one and guarantee themselves a starting position.
Yeah, you're right.
And I love
Prima would be target one, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. The other side of it is also the fact that I do appreciate that they left the Indy 500 alone. They said, hey, this charter will work for 16 out of the 17 races, or all races in our year except one, because who knows, they may expand out the schedule. All races except the one. The Indy 500 is kind of like the Daytona 500. We're going to do things a little bit different for our tentpole race. This is our biggest race of the year. This is a race where nobody's ever been guaranteed a starting position, and we're going to make sure that that stays the same. And I love that.
Absolutely do not touch and change the heritage of the 500 at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's don't take away the drama of Bump Day, which they didn't do, and we've seen over the last couple of years where big name drivers, Graham Rahal and Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, come to mind immediately. But if somebody just happens to have a bad day, I'm not saying that Joseph Newgarden is going to be that guy, but he's one of the first guys that pops into my head. So let's just say that Joseph Newgarden or his team has a very bad day on qualifying day, and now he's suddenly on the bump. That creates big-time drama for the Indy 500. And if by some chance You know, we used this, I think, during Cross Flags. If Team CRN could put a car out there and we could actually have that good of a qualifying run, we could actually see Joseph Newgarden not in the Indy 500. And that is part of the attraction to a race like the Indy 500, because you never know who might not be in the race, just as much as you don't know who's going to be in the race.
Well, wouldn't that put us on the map if we knocked a Penske car out?
Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, we'd be willing to try it.
Oh, I'd be willing to try it too.
I'm going to set this up here, and then we're going to take a break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about this more. Because while we thought that the charter system coming into IndyCar was going to be the biggest story of the week, turns out that the biggest story of the week was actually what happened yesterday when we started to get news that Michael Andretti was going to step away from active ownership in his team. Michael's listed as the CEO and chairman of Andretti Global. He's been the lead man for the organization all the way back to 2002 after ending his driving career. And sources began to tell media that it was thought that Andretti would be looking to move into something more of a strategic position. Not exactly sure what that entails at this point in time. And who was going to take over at owner was not really 100% certain. But as the day went along, I kind of thought about it. I'm sure you came up with this as well. And then no less than the Associated Press said it as well. Dan Taurus, who's the head of Group 1001, which is the main company over insurance groups like Gainbridge and others. He's been a partner with Andretti for a number of years. He actually bought a stake in Andretti Global, a couple of decades ago, actually. And the Associated Press started to report that he has officially taken over as the controlling owner of the organization. Under Michael and Dan, Andretti Global has been expanding out quickly, largely been the one behind the push to get Andretti to get into Formula One. They've also been talking about maybe getting into NASCAR and sometime in the near future. And this is the second move, really, that has taken place when it comes to Andretti ownership within a year. Back in March, they kind of merged in with a group called Zapata Computing Holdings. This is an AI generating company who, according to financial filings, is paying the race team some $9 million under the partnership agreement, while Andretti will pay Zapata some $6 million for services rendered. So a net bonus, if you will, of $3 million. And then the merger becomes complete now that the 2024 season has come to an end. So you've got Taurus, you've got Zapata, and somewhere in there is Michael Andretti, who's going to be in a strategic position. And this is all real confusing. And right now, without Andretti Global coming out and giving a statement as to exactly how this is all going to break down and who is exactly in charge of what, we're not 100% certain how this is going to work, number one, and number two, how this is going to affect their on-track product. Because if you think about what Andretti Global is involved in and is trying to get involved in, this has a whole lot of, in some cases, very long-reaching tentacles. So we're going to take this break. Coach Matt will be back with us on the other side, and we're going to try and break this down as best we can and figure out what happened.
Right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back in. Steve West. Coach Matt with me. He is by phone. He's got a game this morning in something of the wet. Has it stopped drizzling there, by the way, just to be real curious?
It has.
Okay, good. So you might have some half-decent conditions. It's nice and cool out there. Welcome to fall, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You noticed this first, and then I started digging into it. And like I said, as the day progressed, more and more organizations, even up to the Associated Press, started to report about this whole situation about Andretti. I had no idea this was even on the map or in the thought of Michael Andretti, and I can't yet figure out what the purpose is.
That makes two of us.
You know, Michael seemed to be all in on the idea of expanding out the operation. I mean, he's got the Indycar team, which is, legacy. He's in IMSA. He's in Formula E. He's in, the Extreme E, what I think is now going to be called Extreme H, because they're going to move to hydrogen fuel cells. They're talking about getting into Formula One. They've mentioned the fact that they might just be willing to get into NASCAR. And you kind of wonder, was this something that was being pushed behind the scenes and Michael was just going, okay, yeah, I'll be in and I'll be the spokesperson for now, but in the long run, I'm not really 100% behind this, so maybe we need to figure something out?
That's the question mark. That's the question mark. Is it that, or is it something to where if he steps out of the way, and this is something that I did read, and it makes sense, if it would increase his odds, make it better for him and his chances to get into Formula One, with him not being tied to it somehow. As much trouble as they dealt with.
Well, and I get that, but I do have to wonder, is it really more attractive to have the Andretti global name for the team, but at the same time not have an Andretti involved? That doesn't seem like it would be as attractive to Formula One, Yeah,
I agree with it, but, this is such a head scratcher that I still haven't figured it out yet myself.
Yeah, and I'm not so certain until we get a sit-down conversation from the leadership. And I'm just going to throw that out as a blanket statement here. And I don't know who the leadership would be of Andretti Global, but one would hope that it would be Michael and Dan and at least the two of them, if not and,
right.
Everything at this point in time is speculation until we hear from them and we find out what's going through their minds in making this transition.
Right.
Oops. I think we might have lost Coach Matt. Oh, there you go.
I'm here.
Okay. We lost you for a second. Let's put it that way. Go ahead. Repeat what you just said.
That's going to be the big question mark. Is it, what's going to be the reasoning and the basis behind it?
I mean, at this point in time,
it came out of nowhere.
Yeah. At this point in time, the company seems to be on solid ground. They don't have problems when it comes to their sponsorship, their partnership, and it doesn't matter what series we're talking about. They're not having problems when it comes to their partners. So sponsorship for each and every one of the individual groups seems to be just fine. The work continues to progress on the new Andretti Global headquarters, which is big enough to cover all the existing teams and, they say, expand out to cover at least Formula One. If they were to expand out to NASCAR, I don't know if they would base that out of the Indianapolis area or not. I mean, yes, the vast majority of the NASCAR teams in Cup, Xfinity, and Trucks are located in and around the Charlotte area within, we'll just throw out a number of about 100 miles in radius around the Charlotte area. But a notable exception, obviously, is the one that's located in Sandusky, Ohio. I'm just kind of sitting here throwing it out there and wondering where this I'm having a hard time putting this into words because it's just so baffling. but to just try and kind of figure out exactly where this came from. What's the genesis behind it? If they go ahead and do the expansion, because everything does seem to be on track for all of that. They're not reporting financial problems. I just don't get it. I really don't. This is such a baffling move.
It's a definite head scratcher, and it's something we may never know the basis behind or know the reasoning behind.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's just one of them things, I guess you can say it.
Yeah. That's really the only way that we can put it. And the other couple of biggest stories of the week really came out of Formula One. We talked a little bit about this during Cross Flags as well. We're just going to mention it here in the fact that the FIA hit Max Verstappen with kind of a slap on the back of the hand for swearing during a media session upon his arrival in Singapore on Thursday a week ago. His penalty was to perform a quote-unquote work of public interest, probably a community service sort of thing. Verstappen, as he has before, started to warn that he might just take his racing helmet and go home if this continues. He said this week, quote, "For sure, these kind of things definitely decide my future as well. When you can't be yourself, you have to deal with these kind of silly things. I think I'm now at the stage of my career where you don't want to be dealing with this all the time. It's really tiring. Of course, it's great to have success and win races, but once you've accomplished all that, winning championships and races, then you just want to have a good time as well. Everyone is pushing the limit, everyone in this paddock, even at the back of the grid. But if you have to deal with all these kind of silly things, for me, that is not the way of continuing in the sport. That's for sure." And said he has no plans to change on race weekends. He said this, quote, "I will always be myself. I will not, because of that, change how I am in my life anyway. But I also know how I'm operating here. At the end of the day, I don't know how serious they would take that kind of stuff, a quit threat. For me, at one point, when it's enough, it's enough. We'll see. Racing will go on. F1 will go on without me. It's not a problem for me. It is how it is." And he's right about that. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. And this is not just for Max Verstappen. It's for all 19 other drivers that are currently in Formula One or will be next year. If you want to quit, quit. The series is going to go on without you, and only your most ardent fans are really going to miss you. So take your helmet, walk out the door, and don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Bye.
Bingo.
But
Bingo.
And I'm just going to mention it here because you were right. You kind of corrected me on this, because there was a difference between what he got fined for and what you're doing while you're behind the wheel and in the heat of battle. Okay, your emotions will get the best of you and you will say something, but it is incumbent upon the networks, in this case, Sky Sports, which is the coverage that ESPN is taking here in the United States. It's incumbent upon the Sky Sportses of the world, the ESPNs of the world, the NBCs, the Foxes, the whoever it is that's covering racing, to understand that you don't know the audience that's listening, but you have to make the presumption that they're anywhere from 1 to 100. Okay? So you tend to put the audio on a delay. And what that allows them to do is somebody in the background is monitoring driver communications with their crew chief, spotter, whatever. And I'll put Coach Matt back in the driver's seat here and say that Coach Matt behind the wheel is talking to me, his crew chief. He's behind the wheel and he's telling me what needs to be done with the car, but he's mad about what needs to be done with the car. So he uses a couple of words that we can't put on the air right now because of what we do right here on CRN. It's incumbent upon, I'll use NBC because they've got the rights. It's incumbent upon NBC Sports right now to say, that's a great line, but I can't use all of those words. So we put a beep here and a beep here so that you get the point of what Matt, the driver, is saying, but we're not going to get fined $250,000 for each individual instance of a particular word.
Right.
That's one thing. So, yeah, I will admit, you opened up my eyes to that. But I will still say this. You're not in the heat of battle. When you arrive at Singapore, or in a couple of more weeks when they come to Austin, Texas, and begin the stretch run to the end of the year and you do your Thursday media session, this isn't the heat of the battle. You have to understand that you're going in and you're talking to media on a one-on-one basis, and cameras, microphones, are on you. And you have the ability to get your emotions under control and therefore not fly off the handle.
Here's the way I described it on Cross Flag. With it being a press conference setting, that is really defined to me as an open setting. You know what you're walking into.
Sure.
When you're behind the wheel of your car with your helmet on and that 5-point harness system over your shoulders and your lap belt, that's really your zone and your space.
Sure. Yeah.
That is your space. So that's understandable why they're looking at it from that sense. But, when you're, and it goes for stock car racing too, all forms of motorsports, when you're in your setting, and I will openly speak to this, there's no telling what will come out of your mouth when you're in the heat of the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, and again, I'm just going to say it. If this is what ticks you off, Max Verstappen, and it makes you quit, bye. His teammate over at VCARB, Daniel Ricciardo, we talked about this a little bit last week, said he would, if he was going to be done with Formula One, he would be interested in maybe getting behind the wheel of NASCAR, maybe even jump onto a motocross bike. And why was he mentioning that? Because he knew he was on the hot seat. Turns out that seat was even a little bit hotter than what we knew. And he's done. He's gone now. 14th in points, 10 points fewer than his own VCARB teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Wasn't enough to convince the head honchos at Red Bull to keep him on. And they let him go officially about midway through the week here. Nobody's shocked here who's going to be taking over for the next race and presumably throughout the rest of the year. It's the highly thought of reserve driver Liam Lawson. Lawson has been waiting in the wings actually for quite a while. Let me deal with Ricciardo first, because if this is indeed the end of Daniel Ricciardo in Formula One, this is quite a career actually when you stop and think about it. 8 wins, 32 podium finishes, a total of 1,329 championship points in the 258 races he started over 14 years. In his time, he ran for teams like HRT, Toro Rosso, Red Bull, Renault, McLaren, and VCARB, which VCARB is just another iteration of Toro Rosso. Claimed a best finish of 3rd in the points twice, 2014 and 2016, both while he was with Red Bull when he took over for Mark Webber, paired him with Sebastian Vettel at that time. This is not a bad career. Is this top of the line? I mean, he's not going to be thought of in the same lines as even a Max Verstappen or a Sir Lewis Hamilton or a Jackie Stewart. But when you look at it, Daniel Ricciardo had himself a pretty good career if he is indeed done in F1.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you can... I'll say it this way, and this may sound crazy to some, but anytime you can be a multi-time winner in F1 on the world stage, that's a pretty respectable career.
Yeah, it is. And he was able to do it with a number of teams here, too. I mean, he was able to do... the most of those were with Red Bull, but he got a win for McLaren. He got a win for Renault. I mean, it actually prompted a couple of people to get tattoos because he bet them, hey, if I win, you got to go get a tattoo. And he followed through with it. So, not only was it just with one team, he was able to win with multiple teams. So in some ways, it's a little bit of a surprise, but in others, again, when you look at the performance of that car this year, he is being totally overshadowed by Yuki Tsunoda. And for a guy who has no wins in his Formula One career to date in Yuki Tsunoda to be overshadowed even after you've got 8 wins and you've done what you've done, that does open up some eyes. So VCARB just said, you know what, we're done. Let's go figure out a place to put Liam Lawson before we lose him.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Lawson is a very, very good talent, and you can't afford to lose him because we all know how drivers will get snatched in a hurry in Red Bull at F1.
Yep. So they switch a guy from down under for a Kiwi. Lawson is from New Zealand. He's coming to become the new V-Carb teammate to Sonoda. He does have one F1 start to his credit, or a few F1 starts to his credit last year when he was filling in for the injured Daniel Ricciardo, starting at Zandvoort in the Belgian Grand Prix. And in his 5 races, he did claim points one time when he finished 9th in the Singapore Grand Prix last year. Sonoda, by the way, for the record, is signed through 2025. Lawson isn't, but I would imagine that probably is going to change because they keep talking about how good he is. They've been talking about what it is that they are looking to do with him. I would be shocked if they don't sign him to a contract extension quickly.
Yeah, they should, and they rightfully should.
Well, and you know, if you're going to put that much effort and that much faith in him to take over now, not wait until 2025 or the end of the 2024 season. If you're that big on Liam Lawson, then yeah, go ahead, put him in the car and make sure you've got him locked up and you are prepared to go into the future with him. I mean, you want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes you could possibly make is basically give him a tryout from the United States Grand Prix on to the end of the season, not sign him into a contract, and watch him walk to some other Formula One team who saw the opening.
Right.
You know, and then what does Red Bull do?
Simply put, Red Bull just needs to lock him down and be done with it and keep evolving him and keep bringing him up through and get him in good position.
And I'll be real honest with you. We've got, what is today's date? The 28th. We've got just under a month because if I remember right, the U.S. Grand Prix is October 23rd. Is that the weekend? Or 19th through the 20th. Yeah, 19th and 20th. So you got just under a month. You got 4 weeks effectively to be able to get your house in order. This is move 1. You remove Daniel Ricciardo, you install Liam Lawson, now you talk to Liam Lawson and you set up the contract extension. I would be a little surprised if we didn't hear news of an extension to his deal sometime within the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
All right.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
All right, sir, you've got an early game here. Your kickoff is beginning in what, about 20 minutes?
Yep, I got what's the good old Jefferson Pilot 11 a.m. kickoff today. But it's a 9 a.m. kickoff.
You've been a long-time college football viewer in the southeastern United States. You understand that particular reference. All right, well, best of luck to you and best of luck to the kids. Hopefully you come out on the winning side, and we will certainly be talking on Cross Flags on Wednesday, okay?
Thanks, sir.
All right, appreciate you, man. Good luck today. Hope it all works out. Coach Matt right there. And, again, he'll join us again, or join me again, and you, I do hope, for Cross Flags on Wednesday when we'll kind of get into the latest stuff. So now we kind of do a reset here. I'll be by myself for the rest of the show because producer John not able to join me this week either as, hey, college football's in full swing, plus racing. TV things call. We'll get to it next.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
All right. Welcome into it. Coach Matt off to coach. Producer John producing television. So I'm here all by myself. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. This particular Saturday, big one here in our home state of Alabama, because tonight, number 4 Alabama hosting number 2 Georgia in college football. And it is also big time into the playoffs when it comes to what we are dealing with right here on CRN. And of course, that is racing. So let's do a quick recap of what happened last week. Get you set and ready to go for this week. Last Saturday night, it was the Fall Bristol night race. And to some, it was a boring race. And to others, to be able to understand exactly what it took for Kyle Larson to be so dominant, it was an amazing race. A lot of it just kind of depends on exactly what you're looking for out of your particular version of Cup Series racing. How dominant was he? In case you missed it, Larson started the race on the front row. His teammate Alex Bowman claimed the pole. Larson then got out front after, I think it was lap 32, 33, somewhere in that area. And then he left everybody in the dust. He led a lot. Like 462 of the 500 laps run. I'll let that sink in for a second. He led 462 of 500 laps at Bristol. And some people think that was a boring race. Okay. If that's the way you want to look at it that way. But do you understand how hard that is? Do you really get how difficult it is to lead that many laps at Bristol? Youch. Larson bested his Hendrick Motorsports teammate Chase Elliott to the checkers. Bubba Wallace was third, Denny Hamlin fourth, then Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Ryan Priest, Chase Briscoe, Alex Bowman, and Ross Chastain made up the top 10. And remember, this was the cutoff race for the round of 16, and those who were done and out of the playoffs after round 1 or the round of 16, Ty Gibbs no longer a championship contender. Neither is Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, or Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton, we kind of predicted that. I think both Matt and I did back when we did our predictions when it came to this. Ty Gibbs, truth be told, I kind of thought he was going to move on. Martin Truex Jr. had been vastly uneven throughout the course of the season. I kind of figured he was going to be out too. Ty Gibbs and Brad Keselowski were the shock to me, and congratulations to a guy like a Chase Briscoe who was going into the playoffs as really an underdog, and he's been able to make it on to the round of 12. Here's your seed order as things reset to round number 2. Kyle Larson, 5 wins, all the bonus points. He's your 1 seed. Christopher Bell's your 2 seed. Tyler Reddick's your 3. William Byron's your 4. Ryan Blaney's your 5. Then Danny Hamlin is 6. 7 seeds Chase Elliott, and Joey Logano's your 8 seed. Those who are on the early hot seat: Austin Cindric, 4 under the cut line. Daniel Suarez is 6 under the cut line. Alex Bowman is at 7 under. He and Chase Briscoe tied at 7 under, but Bowman holds the tiebreaker at that, so he is actually the 11 seed. Chase Briscoe listed as the 12. So those are the ones on the hot seat as we go to Kansas. And it doesn't get easier after Kansas, because from Kansas they go to Talladega, and from Talladega we go Roval Racing. Make your hay now while you can, boys. Sunday morning U.S. time last week, F1 ran in Singapore. Max Verstappen was hoping to turn the tide on a season that's starting to look more and more like a McLaren kind of year, but it was the Papaya Orange that continues their surge. Lando Norris got the pole. His teammate Oscar Piastri started 5th. When it was all over, Norris claiming yet another win on the year, easily besting out Verstappen by almost 21 seconds. So which is the more boring? A 21-second gap between first and second, or Kyle Larson leading 462 of 500 laps? I'll leave it up to you. Piastri moved up to 3rd. And then you got George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Nico Hulkenberg, and Carlos Sainz able to get the other Red Bull home in 10th. That means big-time points swings continue to go on. Now, Max Verstappen still your points leader in the driver points, but the lead over Lando Norris is down to a 331 to 279 gap. and it's continuing to close. Charles Leclerc's got 245. Oscar Piastri is now up to 237, fighting for third. Carlos Sainz fourth with 190. Lewis Hamilton not that far behind at 175. 155 for George Russell and Sergio Perez with 144. Then you drop all the way down to Fernando Alonso's 62. And then now each of them have 24 points. And I'm talking about Nico Hülkenberg and Lance Stroll. But Nico Hülkenberg holds the tiebreaker, so technically 10th in points is Nico Hülkenberg. Lance Stroll drops to 11th. McLaren now holds 516 points in the Constructors' Cup, and that's compared to Red Bull's 475. McLaren first and third, second and 10th for Red Bull. That's going to create that gap. And there's Ferrari sitting there with 441. Could Red Bull not only miss out on winning the Constructors' Cup this year, but actually drop to third? Mathematically, it's possible. Mercedes has 329. They're all alone in fourth. And then Aston Martin with 86, all alone in fifth. VCARB's got 34. They've been solid at 34 points for a little while now. Haas F1 continues that slow creep up. They've got 31 points now with the 2 points that Nico Hülkenberg got for them last weekend in Singapore. Williams remains with 16. 13 for Alpine. Sauber remains holding 0. And then event number 2 of the chase for the championship in the NHRA wrapped up last weekend with the Carolina Nationals in Charlotte. Antron Brown making it to the finals once again, this time taking on Doug Foley. Brown with a good reaction time advantage, played well all the way to the finish. He wins with this is his 6th event win of 2024, by the way, and 79th event win of his career. 3.848 ET at 319.9 miles per hour. Austin Prock also returning to the finals in Funny Car for the 2nd event in a row. This time he takes on Matt Hagan. Hagan actually with the quicker reaction time, but Prock had the power. He was leading by the 330-foot mark, and he rolled on to the win. 3.924 ET, elapsed time for those of you new to NHRA, at 326.48 miles per hour. This is Prock's 7th win of the year, his 11th overall. It's going to be fun to watch Austin Prock because I guarantee you John Force is really thrilled he has made him a full-time funny car driver for John Force Racing. Pro Stock Car, Dallas Glenn taking on Aaron Stanfield. Then in this situation, slight reaction time goes to Glenn, and the photo finish on the other end showed Glenn with almost as close of a win. 6.626 ET, 207.18 miles per hour. This is Glenn's 4th win of 2024 and his 12th of his career to date. And in Pro Stock Motorcycle, wow, do my eyes deceive me? Nope, they don't. No Gage Herrera again? Yes, indeed. Richard Gadsden taking on Matt Smith in the finals. Gadsden red-lighted. Good reaction time by Smith, who had a free run. He still put on a show. 6.846 ET, 199.35 miles per hour. That's his 2nd win of the year. 40th of his career so far. So here's your updated top fuel points. And I'm only going those within 100 points of the leader at this point in time. Could you get a bigger swing? Yes, but I figure I'd leave it with the top 100 and we'll go from there. We start in top fuel with Antron Brown, who's 53 up on Justin Ashley, 62 over Sean Langdon, 67 ahead of Doug Kalita. To Funny Car, Austin Prock's closest competition's Bob Tasca III, 129 back. Ouch. Pro Stock Car, Dallas Glenn over Aaron Stanfield by 8. Erica Enders, 53 back, 74 down as Greg Anderson. And in Pro Stock Motorcycle, Matt Smith takes over the lead. He's got a 25-point advantage on the Gage Herrera dominant guy that he was. Can he get it back? 27 downs, Richard Gadsden. Those are the only 3 within 100 of the lead. So this weekend's racing that actually began last night. Craftsman Truck Series of Kansas running the Kubota Tractor 200. It was elimination time. The final race of the round of 10. 2 drivers were going to be out of the running for the title. Out front, Ty Majeski was cruising to an apparent win, but when the white flag was being shown to the field, Majeski's truck started to sputter. He was running out of fuel. They could not get that truck full enough to make the entirety of the final run to the checkers. The benefactor, Corey Heim, who sped by, went on to the win, his 6th of the year. Heim able to beat out Lane Riggs to the checkers. Christian Eckes was 3rd. Caden Honeycutt 4th, Dawson Sutton debuting to a 5th place result. Not bad for that kid. 6 through 10, Tanner Gray, Rajah Caruth, Bailey Curry, Grant Enfinger, and Connor Mosack. I mentioned these two drivers because they were in the title run. Were being the key word there. Ben Rhodes could do no better than finishing 22nd. Daniel Dye could do no better than to finish 27th. And those results means they didn't have enough points and they are out officially of the playoffs. So here's your new seed order in the round of 8. Corey Heim is your leader. Christian Eckes is your 2 seed. Ty Majeski's the 3 seed with Nick Sanchez your 4 seed. The ones that are on the hot seat, Rajah Caruth 8 points under the cutoff. Tyler Ankram's 11 under, tied with Grant Enfinger there. And at 15 under is Taylor Gray. So there is the seed order. Good luck. Today, Xfinity Series officially getting things underway with the Kansas Lottery 300 at Kansas Speedway. This kicks off their playoffs. It'll be heard on MRN Radio, seen on the CW Network, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central Time. Sunday, NHRA Midwest Nationals, Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway near St. Louis. They had some rain problems there yesterday. Hopefully they're able to get that all cleared up and ready to roll. This is round 3 of their chase for the championship, which, remember, is only 6 races long. Finals airing on Fox Sports 1 at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. At about that same time, the Cup Series is going to dive into the round of 12 at Kansas Speedway with the Hollywood Casino 400 presented by ESPN Bet. I bet you they don't say that whole title throughout the course of the race. It'll air on USA and MRN Radio. Race coverage starting tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. Formula One is off this weekend. They're the only series that is still in season that we cover that is off. I will say this. We've got a great viewer on CRN Live on YouTube, Athena, who loves to do a race list of all races around the world. That's up right now. By all means, go and check it out. And while you're there, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube. We appreciate it. By the way, we're not done with the racing that happens this week before we would, and I say would, get back on the air next weekend. I'll fill you in a moment. Craftsman Truck Series next Friday at our home track of Talladega Superspeedway. Trucks are going to run the Love's RV Stop 225. Will be shown on Fox Sports 1 and MRN Radio at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Central Time, and that'll kick off the racing for us here at CRN2. And I say it would kick it off. I could give you the schedule, the entirety for next weekend, but I just get into details and throwing out a whole bunch of numbers. I figure I'll just leave it at that. Obviously, Xfinity and Cup Series is going to be involved. I know that Formula One is off. I think the NHRA is off because they continue to go further west. So I think it's just really a NASCAR weekend next weekend, if I remember correctly. But we're not going to be on the air doing this big show edition of the show because I will have to be up in the PA tower too early to be able to do it. Producer John's not going to be able to do it because of TV duties, and Coach Matt, once he gets done with his coaching stuff, will also have to be out at the track. So we're not going to be doing a show next weekend. That means 2 weeks from now, we'll fill you in on all this. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it very much. I'm sure that our flagship station here will be more than happy to be doing some coverage. It just won't be shown over CRN Live on YouTube. But yeah, for those of you that are listening on the radio, you'll get some race coverage from out there at Talladega, I'm sure, from G and everybody else out there. It's going to be a good time. Looking forward to it. And as I passed by Talladega Superspeedway this morning, I get the chance to see it. I mean, if you go on I-20, if you travel I-20, you know this. For those of you that are listening to us and watching us on CRN Live on YouTube and you have not been down I-20 from Atlanta to Birmingham, or even, well, I'll just say going by Talladega Superspeedway, you can see the track perfectly from I-20. It's that close. And I looked over onto Speedway Boulevard, that main drag right there to where you turn into the main entrance. RVs are already parked out there waiting to get parked, and they won't until Monday be able to park. But they're already out there. It's good stuff. Love the fans at Talladega, and it is such a great time. If you've never been, what are you missing out on? Go get your tickets. I think there are still some left. All right. When we come back, we'll do a quick review of what Coach Matt and I were talking about here. We'll just kind of quickly run over the big stories of the week in IndyCar and talk about a whole lot more that's happened in IndyCar this week. IndyCar was the big news breakers this week. We'll talk about it when we come back. Hour number 2's on deck.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back. Cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome in. Appreciate you joining me. I'm Steve West, Coach Matt coaching, producer John producing television. So anyway, hour number 2 underway. In case you missed hour number 1, you missed a lot. When Coach Matt was with us, we talked about what turned out to be the biggest news of the week when it came out live just yesterday. And it was breaking news really throughout the course of about a 4-hour period from about middle of the day, from about noon, 11:30 to noon, till about 4 or 5 o'clock, when it was really kind of confirmed by the Associated Press. Michael Andretti stepping away from active ownership of the team, listed as CEO and chairman of Andretti Global, been the lead man of the organization since 2002 after he ended his driving career. Sources told media that they thought that Andretti was looking to move into something more of a strategic position. Undefined. Don't know what that is. Dan Torres, who is the head of Group 1001, which owns insurance companies like Gainbridge, major sponsor at Andretti Global, has been a partner with Andretti, bought a stake in Andretti Global right about the same time Michael kind of started up the organization back in 2002. Associated Press reports that he has officially taken over as the controlling owner of the organization. Under Torres, under Michael Andretti, Andretti Global has been expanding out fairly quickly. It's largely thought that it was Torres who's been behind the push to get Andretti into F1. It's also, again, the second ownership move that has been made under Andretti Global this year. Back in March, they merged with a company called Zapata Computing Holdings, the AI-generating company, according to their financial filings. Until things really got set, which wasn't set to happen until after the race season officially ended. The They paid the race team about $9 million under the partnership agreement, while Andretti paid Zapata about $6 million for services rendered, so about a $3 million benefit to Andretti Global. Andretti Global's in a good position, or at least that's what we've been told. They're building a 500,000 square foot facility, 500,000 square foot facility northwest of downtown, on the map, northeast of downtown Indianapolis, that is set to cover all of their current operations, IndyCar, IMSA, Formula E, Extreme H. And there's room, they say, to fit the Formula One team in there, should they be granted a team. And then they got to talking a few weeks ago about maybe even expanding out to NASCAR. I don't know whether the shop is big enough to hold a full NASCAR operation, but at this point in time, I don't think it really matters, because I still think that Formula One is their main goal. And if it is, does it benefit you that Michael Andretti is not actually the active owner? And I don't really know. We talked about it about an hour ago, Matt and I, and we're not the only ones that are sitting here scratching our heads going, what's the strategy move here? What does this mean for the long-term goals and growth of Andretti Global? And the truth of the matter is we don't know. We're having to wait. We're playing the waiting game right now on what's going to happen. The charter system has been officially adopted by IndyCar as well. 25 entries, the top 25 entries from the 2024 racing season just ended, will get charters for next year. So here's the breakdown. Those teams with 3 charters: Andretti Global, Arrow McLaren, Chip Ganassi, Rahal Letterman Lanigan, and Team Penske. And then with 2 charters each, AJ Foyt Enterprises, Dale Coyne Racing, Ed Carpenter Racing, Juncos Hollinger Racing, and Meyer Shank. So there's the breakdown right now. That means that Prima's sitting on the outside looking in, but they knew that they would be, and they're still coming in with Callum Ilott and a driver yet to be named. When or if they'll be able to start leasing out and or selling charters, we don't know. None of that has been said, so we're still waiting to find that information out. Let's see, what else can we get into ourselves here? Let's go back to Ed Carpenter here. Because Ed Carpenter suddenly, and if this had been any other regular week, in other words, we weren't dealing with the charter situation and Michael Andretti suddenly up and deciding, you know what, I'm not going to be the owner anymore. Whether he was forced or made the decision on his own doesn't matter. If it hadn't been for those 2 stories, Ed Carpenter would be the biggest story of the week in IndyCar, because Ed had said after the year that he wanted to make decisions and get them announced quickly so that he was set and ready to go for the 2025 racing season. And as what it appears now, and this part of this broke while we were recording this week's Crossed Flags podcast, which you can now watch on CRN Live on YouTube, by the way. I know. Self-promo. The biggest shock to me is that Ed Carpenter Racing won't feature Ed Carpenter as a driver, except for one race. Ed Carpenter's been that guy who has taken all the oval track races of any particular year, and he's been the one behind the wheel of his number 20 car. He's got a 20 and a 21 in his stable, the 2 cars that he's going to have charters for. And in the 20 car, he has always seemingly split time between himself and fill-in-the-blank driver. The fill-in-the-blank driver has raced all of the road and street course races. Not this coming year. Carpenter announced that with the departure of Rinus VeeKay after 5 years with the team, remember we talked about that last week, that the 2024 rookie Christian Rasmussen is going to move full-time and take over the number 21. He was splitting time with Carpenter in the 20 car this year, but remember, for the last 3 races of the year, the doubleheader, Worldwide Tech Raceway Gateway, and then the season finale, which was at Nashville Superspeedway, Carpenter backed out, let Rasmussen get behind the wheel and finish out the year so that he could get his feet wet on ovals, because he had not driven an IndyCar on an oval track. And that allowed, by the way, Rasmussen to keep the car inside the top 22 in final points. Therefore, they're in the leader circle, and they get money allocated from IndyCar because they're part of the leader circle program. And as the result, his contract got extended. He will drive the full 2025 season. Who's he going to be paired with? That would be no less than Alexander Rossi. Rossi got signed this week, moves over to ECR after 2 years racing for Arrow McLaren, who decided not to extend his contract. Rossi, of course, going to be full-time in the number 20 car. And again, Ed Carpenter's out of a ride for all but the Indy 500. Carpenter said he will indeed have a third team ride put in for that race. He'll have to qualify, obviously, on time because, as we talked about, even when it comes to the charters, those charters work for all events but the Indy 500. Indy 500 will still have the drama of having no safety net, period. You have to qualify for the race on speed. In addition to taking himself out of the car, Ed Carpenter announced he's brought in a new partner for his organization as well. His name is Ted Giloff. He's the owner of Heartland Food Products Group. He's officially been brought in and listed as co-owner. This will bring in Heartland Food Products as brands that will also appear on ECR Racers next year. Brands like Splenda and Java House will be shown on the sides of those cars. The partners, after announcing the driver lineup, then talked about joining with Carpenter, saying, quote, Indycar is growing and attracting high-caliber brands, and in Ted's case, also a strong business partner for our team. Ted will help us continue to strive for excellence both on and off the track. It is a nice influx of money. There's no doubt about it. Geloff added, quote, we manufacture all our products here in Indiana and employ over 1,200 people. We're committed to the Indiana community and are extremely excited to continue that by joining Ed Carpenter Racing. I'm ready to do my part to help Ed and ECR in any way we can to get on the podium and win races. Ed, Tony George, Stuart Reed, they've all been wonderful to me throughout this process. They welcomed my family and I into their family. Ed's an incredible guy in all respects and someone you're drawn to be associated with. He embodies the ideals that I look for as a partner. So Alexander Rossi, he's got a few wins in IndyCar, most notably Indy 500 win in his rookie year to his credit. Does he bring instant credibility above and beyond what ECR already had? I don't know. What he does do is he brings stability to a 20 car, which again has been split over the past several years between two different drivers at least. Ed Carpenter doing, again, all the oval races, and then whoever it is filling in doing all of the road and street course races, which is, yes, the vast majority of a 17-race schedule. But, you know, again, it takes that 20 car, or it used to take the 20 car really out of any kind of championship thought when it came to the team or, you know, really being high up in the leader circle points. To be able to ensure that they were going to be in the top 22 and be in the leader circle, you have to finish in the top 22 in points. You can't buy your way in. You have to race your way into it. And when you started splitting things up between the two drivers, and I don't know the exact rundown of how the leader circle works, but I know that it has to do with the points that the drivers accrue. And to ensure that enough points were accrued by Christian Rasmussen to ensure that it got into the leader circle, Ed Carpenter backed out, and now he's all the way out. Wow. Things happen a lot very quickly this week. So weird. As we noted on the show last week, not many open seats left for the 2025 season. Matt said that he noted how former Williams F1 driver Logan Sargent happened to be at Nashville Superspeedway and might get a chance to test. And as it turns out, he's going to get that opportunity. He's going to test with Meyer Shank Racing at the Thermal Club in Southern California in mid-November for the primary off-season test session. Of course, they'll have a small preseason test session as well, which I think is also going to be back at Thermal Club. Now, Sargent was brought up to the Williams F1 team in the 2023 season. He's got 37 F1 starts to his credit, but he was vastly underperforming compared to his teammate Alex Albon. So he got replaced during the August break in favor of Franco Colapinto, who strangely enough has not been signed for next year. And here's why. He's got no seat at Williams next year. Alex Albon remains there, and Williams went out and they got themselves Carlos Sainz from Ferrari. So Franco Colapinto is a free agent. See what happens with him. This will also be the first time that Meyer Shank Racing gets a car out onto the track since it forged a technical alliance with Chip Ganassi Racing. Yeah, who knew that they did that? It was very quiet. Reportedly, this will also include the sharing of engineering personnel, advice on chassis setup, and they'll get some suspension parts that Chip Ganassi Racing has available as well. Now, as for Sargent, he's not going to get an immediate ride with Meyer Shank. They're actually settled driver-wise for 2025, but getting him the chance to get behind the wheel is actually basically a showcase for him to be able to go out for any team that's still looking for a driver. And right now, there are only 2 teams that are looking for a driver. We've mentioned Prima. Prima has Callum Ilott, but they haven't mentioned driver number 2 yet. So you got 1 seat there. And Dale Coyne Racing, they didn't announce a full-time driver for the entirety of the 2024 season anyway, and that was for both cars. So presumably they've got 2 seats available. This is your tryout, Logan Sargent. Good luck. Chevrolet has announced that at this time, now with Prima signing on as being an official customer, they're maxed out for 2025. They will supply engines to AJ Foyt Enterprises, Arrow McLaren Racing, Ed Carpenter Racing, Juncos Hollinger Racing, Team Penske, and again, Prima. That's 14 full-time entries. They say they will be able to cover extra engines for customers who are going to put in an extra entry or maybe 2 for the Indy 500. They'll be able to cover that, but for the most part, they're pretty much at their ceiling. With that commitment in hand, Eric Warren, who's the executive director of global motorsports for Chevrolet, said this, quote, "It's difficult as we add teams because, again, as much as we at Chevrolet want the teams to work totally together for Chevrolet, they're still racing each other and still competitive. It creates more mouths to feed, more information for us. We see that as a positive. The more we can learn, the more we can try different things, but there's a limit of that we don't want to spread our resources out too thin and not be able to compete." So the next obvious question would be, are you at your limit? Warren said this, quote, "I always say that we're over the limit. Certainly I get told that by our financial people." Now he smiled when he said that. But he added, quote, "But we do keep pushing. We're maxed out. It's important to us that the series is successful. Sometimes just the attrition of people and teams and everything. We just have to keep investing in it. We try to look at each situation individually and whether or not we can handle it, but I think we're okay at 14. Again, this is 29 with Prima coming in. That means Honda's got 15 full-time. And don't forget, Honda has been making some noise. Now, I don't know how serious this noise is, but as we continue to gear ourselves up for 2026, and I say 2026 because while this doesn't directly affect IndyCar, it indirectly affects IndyCar. Honda has once again fully committed to providing engines in F1 with the new rules and regulations that come in 2026. They're going to be allocating a lot of resources there to make sure that they don't stumble out of the gate. Will that affect their IndyCar operation? One would hope not. One would hope that they have enough personnel to be able to do that. But at the same time, you do have to question it. So we'll see whether or not 2026 is a time when Honda begins to really start making noise about continuing on. IndyCar has said they would love to get a third engine supplier, but nobody seems to be really stepping up. This is kind of the same thing as NASCAR. NASCAR keeps talking about, we keep talking with this manufacturer and that manufacturer about coming in and joining Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota. But nothing's materialized. It's all talk until you see the brand mark on a car out on the track, or in this case, you see the brand on a car over the engine cowl on the track in IndyCar. Good luck. Looking ahead at what else might be on the table for IndyCar, apparently, is a return to Texas. Not necessarily to Circuit of the Americas, not even to Texas Motor Speedway. Racer.com is reporting that a return to Texas seems to be coming in the form of a Dallas street race. Okay. It'll appear on the 2026 schedule, they say, and to be fair, it's not actually downtown Dallas. Instead, it's going to be on the streets and in the parking lot around AT&T Stadium, which is the home of the National Football League's Dallas Cowboys, and that is located in a suburb of Arlington, Texas, slotted in between Dallas and Fort Worth. Neither IndyCar nor the Cowboys ownership group, headed obviously by Jerry Jones, is commenting on the report at this time, but this does follow a long tradition of Texas hosting open-wheel racing. You go back to 1984, F1 held a one-year Dallas Grand Prix at Fair Park. IndyCar raced at the 2-mile round Texas Motor Speedway near College Station in 1973. 74-75, they were away and then returned to it 1976 through 1979. If you don't know about Texas Motor Speedway, by the way, you really need to look this up. This was a pretty cool racing facility, which is now about, unfortunately, half destroyed, if not a little bit more now because of housing development that's coming in to that particular area. But Texas Motor Speedway was a really, really cool place. IndyCar also raced in Houston, a race that ran around the unused Astrodome and the new what is now NRG Stadium, home of the Houston Texans. That was 2014. They raced in COTA in 2019, and I don't know why they're not still there. And as noted, Texas Motor Speedway's been on the slate for quite a while. Really was kind of something of a staple until they raced there the last time in 2023. Glad to have them back. But again, why it's not a return to COTA? Not really sure. Last weekend, IndyCar officials reported that Rocky Moran, who started 3 Indy 500s, passed away. Born in Pasadena, California in 1950, got into racing early on, moving up in the open-wheel ranks, joining Dan Gurney's All-American Racers operation. He made his IndyCar Series debut in 1981, his first race at Watkins Glen. Qualified 7th, worked his way actually all the way to the front of the field and led 21 laps in all. But the team wasn't able to get him totally loaded up with fuel, and he ran out of fuel while in the lead. He ended up finishing 6th. Gurney remembered him later on, brought him on board for an IMSA GTO class effort in 1986. He would go between IndyCar and IMSA for several years following. He paired with the likes of Willie T. Ribbs, P.J. Jones, Mark Dismore. He even got in where he was able to claim a win in the 24 Hours of Daytona in 1993. In 1988, he joined A.J. Foyt Enterprises for an Indy 500 ride where he finished 16th on the day. He returned in 1989 with Curb Racing, got 14th before coming back in 1990, this time with a third team, Gore Racing, GOHR, where he could do no better than finish 25th. Tried to make the Indy 500 fields in 1992, 93, and 94. Didn't qualify for the first 2, and the team withdrew before qualifying even got underway in 1994. Moran's the father of Rocky Moran Jr. He's well known for opening up Moran Raceway Kart Track in 2003 in Beaumont, California. They worked up one heck of a facility, by the way, a 1-mile-long, 19-turn course where some karts were known to get up to about 100 miles an hour. The track didn't last long, however. It closed in 2007. Rocky Moran Sr. passing away due to cancer. God, cancer sucks. Survived by his wife, Kayla, daughter, Kelly, sons, Rocky Jr. and Cody, along with 7 grandchildren. Rocky Moran, 74 years old. Thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends. We're going to stick with an open wheel theme. We're going to turn our attention over to Formula One next, kind of like what we did with IndyCar. About an hour ago, talking with Coach Matt, we'll do a quick review of the big stories there and fill in on the rest of what's going on in the Formula One world, and then get into some stock car news before the end of the show. Still got a long way to go.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back into the show. Steve West here, and talking a little Formula One here in that Daniel Ricciardo. We mentioned this an hour ago. He's out. Visa Cash App RB, VCARB is what we call him, the sister team to Red Bull Racing. He is done, and maybe at the end of his Formula One road. He's 35 years old, so it doesn't really seem like he's going to be at the top of a whole lot of teams' lists. But if you're looking for a fill-in, he certainly would be somebody that you might want to talk to. Where could he go if he is indeed done with Formula One? He could go to IndyCar, that's obvious. But he's kind of like a whole lot of other Formula One drivers. They seem scared of IndyCar for one reason and one main reason, and that's oval track racing. They all seem to be freaked out by it. But when they get over here and they actually do it, most of them seem to actually really enjoy it. Look at Romain Grosjean, just as one example. So I don't know. He's talked about maybe trying to get into NASCAR. He understands that he would be slow right off the bat, and he really said that while he is fascinated with bikes and he would love to jump on a motocross bike, probably wouldn't be in competition. He is officially out. Liam Lawson is in. For Liam Lawson, the New Zealand native, he's got a couple of F1 starts to his credit when he actually filled in for Daniel Ricciardo when he got injured in the practice session at Zandvoort last year in the Belgian Grand Prix. In his 5 races, he got 1 points finish. He finished 9th in the Singapore Grand Prix. Yuki Tsunoda, by the way, is signed through 2025. Liam Lawson is not. I get the funny feeling that's going to change here pretty soon. As for Ricciardo, should this be the end of his career, 14 years total for him in Formula One, 8 wins, 32 podium finishes, 1,329 championship points in 258 races in 14 years. Not bad at all. Claimed best finish in the points of 3rd. That was twice, both with Red Bull 2014 and 2016 after he took that car over from Mark Webber. And then there's more people leaving Red Bull. And this is front office kind of level. And here's the thing. Whenever you get a winning organization, it doesn't matter what the sport is. Whenever you get a winning organization, those who are trying to chase you down to win those titles that this organization, in this case Red Bull, is doing, they go and they poach people from that championship winning organization, and Red Bull is the ones with the targets on their back, their front, their hats and helmets and everything else. And the latest to move is head designer and chief technical officer Adrian Newey. We talked about him, right? How about this guy, Will Courtenay? Will Courtenay's left Red Bull. He's going to move to McLaren. He will become McLaren's new sporting director. Courtenay has been with Red Bull for 20-plus years. This is that continuing exodus that we're talking about. It isn't exactly known when his start date with McLaren is going to be because he's got a contract with Red Bull that runs through 2026, mid-2026 to be exact. So it's going to be real curious as to how this happens. European law is very much different here from rules when it comes to America, when it comes to contracts like this. So I don't know. There's going to be a waiting period. The question is how long that waiting period is going to be. If you're thinking you might want to take in a Formula One race, but you've been kind of waffling because of the cost of tickets, Circuit of the Americas might actually have a deal for you for the race coming up in late October that would allow you to also take in a big college football game, too. I found this story just too good to pass up. Seems that when the scheduling gurus came out with the 2024 University of Texas Longhorn schedule, they did not note when the United States Grand Prix was being held. In the same city. University of Texas is in Austin, so's COTA. Well, guess who's coming to town on the weekend that Formula One's going to be in town? No less than the Georgia Bulldogs. So what do you do if you're COTA? You figure it out and you offer a ticket deal. They're calling it the, quote, split the uprights package. This is going to net the buyer tickets to the Saturday college football game between Texas and Georgia at Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium. And then you'll be able to head over to Circuit of the Americas. You can take in the Saturday sprint race and concerts by Eminem, if that's your sort of thing, and Sting, formerly of the Police. Then the ticket also gets the buyer into Sunday's Formula One race and the post-race celebration, seats in the Germania Insurance Amphitheater. Not exactly sure where that is, so I don't know how good the seats are. And the tickets are actually kind of surprisingly affordable considering you're going to get what seems to be likely to be a top 10, if not a top 5 college football matchup and the Formula One race at the same time, starting at $289 per ticket. And yes, that is cheaper than if you were to go buy each ticket separately. Those tickets are only available through Ticketmaster. So if you hate Ticketmaster, sorry. We'll get back to the Ticketmaster side of things in a moment. Red Bull has teamed with Memento and exclusives. Get ready for this, folks. This is going to give rich fans, and yes, I use that term very, very pointedly, a chance to be able to purchase a Red Bull full motion simulator. Huh? It's a replica car. It's going to be based on the 2023 RB9 model racer, you know, the one that dominated both the driver and the Constructors' Cup Championship last year. Memento Exclusive said that they took extensive pictures of the 2023 racers and have carefully recreated it with a team of expert engineers and mechanics looking to make sure that it is as accurate as possible. With the idea is to give the customer an experience that is as close to possible to what Max Verstappen and or Sergio Perez experienced through the 2023 race season in simulator form. In other words, you'll get to do iRacing in it, okay? If you order the simulator, you get a model that is the actual size of the racer from the front wing to right about midway of the engine cover. In other words, you don't get the rear wing, or suspension as the case may be. This doesn't include suspension. It just sits down on the floor. The customer can choose to have it in Verstappen or Perez branding, and you can also get whatever 2023 look you would like. You could get the regular look that they did the vast majority of the year, but you could go with the special paint schemes that they broke out for Miami, Austin, and or Las Vegas. If you'd like to know more, go to f1authentics.com. It's pretty cool to look at, but I'm going to warn you, it ain't cheap. How much, you ask? Sure you want to know? How about $136,472 to go iRacing? Okay. The judge in the trademark infringement case brought out by Haas Automation against the former Haas F1 team principal, Gunther Steiner. The judge said, tossing this. Haas brought the case against Steiner based upon the popular book from Steiner entitled Surviving to Drive, where he used pictures that included Haas branding and trademarks, apparently without getting permission from Gene Haas, Haas Automation, or Haas F1. Suing under a copyright infringement clause, the judge ruled this, quote, the book recounts Steiner's experiences as a team principal of the Haas F1 team during the 2022 season. Using photos that include the Haas marks is an artistic choice to provide additional context about the 2022 season with the Haas F1 team. Here, there is no explicit indication, overt claim, or explicit misstatement that the source of the work is Haas Automation. Accordingly, the defendant's use here of the Haas marks is protected under a case called Rogers. Defendant's motion is therefore granted to dismiss the case. The judge, based in North Carolina, also dismissed a common law unfair business practices claim. Steiner, meanwhile, has sued Haas over commissions and royalties that he alleges that Gene Haas owes him over the course of several years. At this time, the court has not ruled on that case, and as soon as we hear anything on that, we'll let you know. That brings us to NASCAR, and I use the term NASCAR, not Cup Series, because this does affect all of NASCAR. This is kind of a bold move, and it's proving to be controversial amongst the fans. And the reason why I mentioned, if you don't like Ticketmaster, I'm sorry, when it came to that split the uprights deal that would get you into the University of Texas, University of Georgia college football game and the F1 game on the same, or the F1 race of the same weekend in Austin, Texas next month, is because NASCAR has cut a deal, three-way deal actually, that combines the efforts of NASCAR, Speedway Motorsports Incorporated, and Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster is now the official ticketing partner of NASCAR, covering tracks owned by both NASCAR and Speedway Motorsports Incorporated. Through the statement released, they claim that this is going to make it easier than ever before for fans to find the tickets they want for the track that they want and be able to purchase those tickets. The deal starts for the 2025 season. According to the press release, the deal will be made somewhat smoother through Ticketmaster's SafeTix, Smart Queue, and other tools that are available on the Ticketmaster site to simplify the buying process, enhance online security for purchases, and drive growth in data management, pricing, marketing, and distribution. The fans this is social media. Understand this. And mostly keyboard warriors are going to be what? Negative. But the fans seem unimpressed for the most part. Most of the reactions, again, the relative anonymity allows that, but most seem to think that those behind this deal must think the fans are too stupid to figure out how to buy the tickets themselves. There are some worried about the Ticketmaster fees on top of the price of the tickets right now. And in fact, in looking through a lot of those responses, I saw a whole lot of people said, this doesn't dissuade me from going to a NASCAR race, but what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to go to the track and I'm going to buy it from the track in person and skip the Ticketmaster part of it. Ticketmaster's got a lot of blowback. I was kind of curious as to why they chose to make this deal, but Ticketmaster probably came to them and offered them something pretty good. I'll leave it at that. On a lighter note, the ARCA Menards series is set to continue under that title sponsorship. ARCA and Menards announced a multi-year extension of the sponsorship deal just yesterday as we air live on Saturdays. Menards, a home improvement store based in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, goes back to the 1950s, now has about 325 stores in 15 states. If you're listening in pretty much any part of the southeastern part of the country where we are based, you haven't seen them because they're based mostly in the Midwest and Plains states. Menards became the title sponsor of the ARCA series back in 2009 and remained in that role when NASCAR bought the series in 2018. I remember that well. It was news that started to break over Talladega race weekend. They made the announcement in the media center in the infield at Talladega. Slotted just below the Craftsman Truck Series, where nearly 80% of all drivers who are currently racing in Cup, Xfinity, or trucks have at one point in time or another raced in the ARCA Menards series, if not ARCA Menards East or ARCA Menards West. So congratulations to those two sides. On the flip side of the sponsorship deal, and this turns us into Cup news, Joe Gibbs Racing, and we've talked about this recently, sponsors at Joe Gibbs Racing tend to find themselves pretty happy about where they are. But in one particular case, maybe not. Now, they've been there for a while. Could they be backing out? They certainly have lessened their involvement in the team over the last, several years. They used to be full-time, like most sponsors. They were on the hood pretty much for the entirety of an entire season, but that's gotten too expensive. So they started to back off. We'll tell you who it is and which driver is affected when we come back and do the stretch run of CRN.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Final segment of this week's Championship Racing Network. Don't forget, next weekend, because it is Talladega weekend and because of the priorities of having to work the PA system, we're not going to be doing a live show next week. We'll have Cross Flags this Wednesday. We will be back with Cross Flags the next week, and then in 2 weeks from today, we'll be right back here, ready to go again. Assuming, of course, the college football doesn't preempt us. But that's another story entirely. All right, to the Cup Series. Sponsors of Joe Gibbs Racing, as we mentioned, tend to hang around for a while. Sometimes not as willing to commit for an entire season as they used to be. I mean, for example, when I first got into Joe Gibbs Racing, when I became the fan of Tony Stewart in the last years of Darrell Waltrip, it was Home Depot on the 20 car for Tony Stewart. It was Interstate Batteries on the 18 car for Bobby Labonte. Interstate Batteries is still a sponsor within Joe Gibbs Racing, but they certainly don't do an entire year anymore, and Home Depot's gone. Well, the latest one that's kind of waffling on this affects Denny Hamlin in the 11 car, and it's FedEx, Federal Express. A report in the Sports Business Journals this week said that the Memphis-based delivery company is expected to lessen their commitment. They've been on the car since 2005, many of those years as the only primary sponsor. But with that commitment getting up to near $25 million annually, they've backed off, which allows some companies like Mavis Tire and Auto to join as primaries as well. The report goes on further to claim that FedEx might actually be looking to exit out of their sponsorship of the number 11 car altogether. That seems a little extreme because this would be the first that we've heard of this. Sports Business Journal's pretty much, though, on it when it comes to their reporting, so we'll see. This would, of course, leave Joe Gibbs Racing to be able to seek out new sponsorship for the ride. The SBJ does note that FedEx has been reworking their entire sports marketing department over recent years, and they've been looking to cut some costs. One of those moves was, for example, to end the naming rights of the Washington Commanders National Football League Stadium. That was a deal that FedEx had been in since 1999, and that's now done. So that was probably, what, $10 to $15 million a year-ish? By the way, remember that big altercation between Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Busch that happened in North Wilkesboro right after the All-Star race? All of that resulted in the indefinite suspensions of Stenhouse's father, Ricky Sr., and the JTG Dougherty Racing crew member, RJ Otto. OTTO, not AUTO. When NASCAR released the penalty sheet post-Bristol, no new penalties were announced, but NASCAR did state that both Stenhouse Sr. and Otto have been reinstated. What they did to be reinstated, we don't know, but they're allowed to be back at the track either way. Not much Cup Series news this week. We move on to the Xfinity Series, and with the debut of the Xfinity Series on the CW Network Friday a week ago, it actually proved to be a pretty big boon for the network. When the numbers finally came through, the fifth of 5 over-the-air networks noted that they pulled in 906,000 viewers for the race at Bristol, the final race of the regular season. Now, it should be noted that the Bristol race numbers were the highest number of viewers for any Xfinity Series race going back to July 20th of this year. And that 906,000 viewers is actually the highest number for any broadcast on the CW primetime lineup in 8 months. Okay, then. This weekend, going to be a little bit bigger of a test. Today's race this afternoon, Kansas Speedway, right in the middle of the afternoon. It's up against college football. So this ought to be an interesting test for him. But as a further show of partnership with the CW and NASCAR teaming up and getting onto the hood of the Stewart-Haas Racing Cole Custer 00 Ford Mustang Dark Horse in today's Kansas Lottery 300. They're going to be promoting, in this case, NXT on CW. That's the pro wrestling weekly series that began back in 2012. I've seen the car. Let's just call it colorful. I got to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of pro wrestling. I was when I was younger, kind of fell away from it. If you're into it, though, you might be interested in this car. And they're on a good one. Defending champion who's the 1 seed going into the playoffs. Custer's teammate Riley Erbst ready to go for a 2024 Xfinity Series title as well, even while his NASCAR future remains undecided. Erbst joins his SHR teammate in the playoffs, but while Custer's got 2 wins and is a favorite to defend his title, Erbst is an underdog. He comes in with only 1 win, and that was, well, quite a while ago. Erbst knows he will not be back with Stewart-Haas or what is now set to become the Haas factory team next year. They've already announced Cole Custer will be driving the number 41 Cup Series entry their lone Cup entry, at least at this time. And they're bringing Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed in to fill the 2 Xfinity Series rides. So what does Herbst do? At this time, he says he doesn't know. He got to talking with media in a teleconference this week and said, quote, distraction-wise, I think it weighs on all of us a little bit. I'd be lying if it said it didn't. Hopefully things sort of sort themselves out here in the meantime. But in the future, I just can't worry about that. I have to worry about the 98 team and trying to get the best results that we can for this weekend at Kansas to put ourselves even higher above the cut line. It's been a little bit of a distraction, but I'm not too confident about what's going to happen next year. In other words, he just doesn't know. And I got to admit, that's surprising. Ryan Preece, I've said this many, many times, but if you're fairly new to the show, either Cross Flags podcast on Wednesdays or this particular weekend, the big show as we call it, when it comes to my fandom, I'm a Stewart Haas Racing guy. And I follow Stewart Haas Racing pretty carefully. Riley Herbst is a talented young driver. Ryan Preece is a guy who is a good short track guy who has his moments on road tracks, but he hasn't proven himself at tracks like the bigger tracks. Kansas, for example, 1.5 mile. Talladega, Daytona, Michigan, the big 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 mile long tracks, right? So Ryan Preece doesn't necessarily surprise me that he hasn't figured out exactly what he's going to be doing next year. Riley Herbst, on the other hand, is a bit more of a head scratcher because Riley has a couple of wins now and he is able to consistently park that 98 car, if not inside the top 10, in the top 5. He is solid, if unspectacular. And he does bring sponsorship with Monster Energy drink with him. Not altogether an unappetizing thing if that's what you're looking for, but he's still not signed. Again, not really sure why. Mike Harmon Racing from nearby Birmingport, Alabama, they've announced they've acquired the owner points from the number 33 Xfinity Series entry effective for this weekend at Kansas Speedway. Gaining those points, which ran only one race earlier this year with Kyle Busch behind the wheel, but it does indeed help the number 74 entry. That jumps him up to 43rd in the owner's standings. Now, what does that do for him, you might ask? This means that with 39 cars on the preliminary entry list, Harmon actually moves ahead of 2 other entries for Kansas. Joey Gase Motorsports, the number 53, and the SS Greenlight Racing number 07. This is the 10th race that Mike Harmon Racing is trying to get the number 74 to qualify for. So far, they've been only able to make 3 of those races based on speed. I don't know whether the owner points help them, but at least they're above when it comes to incidentals, if you want to put it that way. So good luck, Mike. See how you do. Craftsman Truck Series news, Rackley War Racing. What is going on with Rackley War? Said this during Cross Flags. Rackley War, when they first came out a few years ago and said, hey, we're putting out a team, kind of like that underdog thing, I wanted to root for them. I wanted to see David come in and be able to slay Goliath. You know, we always, as Americans, we like the underdog. You know, Chicago Cubs were this lovable group of losers until they won the World Series back in 2016 after 108 years. I also kind of know that feeling. Took 86 years for my Boston Red Sox to claim a World Series between 1918 and 2004. And they were lovable losers as well. You know, we have this soft spot in our heart. The New Orleans Saints, the dregs of the universe. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when they started off 0 for what, almost 2 seasons? They were these lovable losers, and we just rooted for them. We wanted them to go out, and they wanted them to be able to get that win. We wanted them to go and finally end the World Series drought. We love the story of David beating Goliath, basically. But Rackley War Racing can't seem to figure out which direction they're going. With 3 races left in the 2023 season, they split with Matt DiBenedetto. That was a guy who got them into victory lane. And they split with him. So they hired Ty Dillon. Didn't really benefit him. Dillon and Rackley War have now parted ways effective immediately. Okay, what are we doing now? Well, they put Dawson Sutton in the number 25 Chevy Silverado last night and for the rest of the year, and said that Dillon is going to stick with the team and become Sutton's driver, coach, and mentor while Dillon tries to figure out his future plans. And rumors have it that he may be in line in a return to the Cup Series after a year out of the top level. Dillon isn't announcing what being a driver coach might entail. And at this time, Rackley War is saying it's too early to settle their 2025 driver situation. Now, who is Dawson Sutton? Well, Dawson Sutton happens to be the son of one of Rackley War's top-level executives. So, yeah, we talked about this a little bit more during Cross Flags. By all means, go check it out. I will say this. He did do well at Kansas last night. He parked that car inside the top 10. That was something that Ty Dillon's had a hard time doing all year long. So maybe it was the driver, not the truck. Let's wait and see what happens when they come to Talladega and go through the rest of the year. But at least on the debut, Dawson Sutton did a very nice job. We'll see if this actually does work to the benefit of Rackley War Racing and if they can get themselves settled in and just start to concentrate on what they need to concentrate on. And that's being competitive and trying to go after and maybe win a race or two here or there. You know, like you did when you had Matt DiBenedetto behind the wheel. Nice Motorsports already working towards finalizing their 2025 driver lineup. They announced Matt Mills going to be back in the number 42 Chevrolet Silverado next year. Mills signed to drive the truck this year, last October, featuring sponsorship from JF Electric and Utilitra. They've signed to return next year as sponsor as well. Mills has been kind of trying to adapt to the truck series. He's only been able to crew 4 top 15 finishes this year. His best was back at Charlotte in May when he finished 4th. The team promises that other trucks are going to be filled soon. They'll have more announcements about their other drivers' partnerships and other personnel, but they've got one locked down. And I think that with Matt Mills being able to do it, and he's got top level, he's run the Xfinity Series, NASCAR experience, getting him another year in there is certainly going to help. And the fact that you've got the sponsorship to make sure that you can back that up, that's a good thing. I would expect them to probably do better next year and start to really work towards not just getting 4 top 15, but you start looking towards getting more top 10s, maybe several top 5s as well. Do you become a championship contender next year just because of the stability of the team? Not necessarily, but stranger things have happened. Then there's Spire Motorsports, and if you've become a fan of Spire Motorsports this season, there's good news in the fact that you might, if you're in Charlotte the week after Talladega, be able to take part in their second fan day of 2024. They're going to hold it Friday before the race on the Charlotte Roval, October the 11th to be specific, before the race weekend anyway. When the team bought the old Kyle Busch Motorsports operations, they made the plans and in the offseason moved their operations from Concord over to Mooresville, where the Kyle Busch Motorsports operation had been. It's a much bigger facility. It's a little bit of a trip, but it's certainly worth the effort if you're a Spire fan. The event will start at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Friday a week from now, and will include fair rides, carnival games, food trucks, show cars, and a whole lot more. The team drivers are going to be on hand from the Cup and the Craftsman Truck Series operation, and they'll be signing autographs starting at 11 a.m. Should be pretty cool if you're going to be in the area. And finally, a little bit of a note from Formula E here. And seats continue to fill up fast. In fact, there's only one left, if I have my count correct, because the Lola ABT team has finalized their 2025 driver lineup. Lucas Degrassi's back. And there is no doubt about it now with this move that Lucas Degrassi, former Formula E champion, is now the team leader and adds mentor. They've signed a rookie, Zane Maloney. Born and raised in Barbados, Maloney, through his racing career, has had quite a bit of success. He won the British Formula 4 title, moved up to Formula 3 in 2022, where he finished second in the points. He was that year's Rookie of the Year. All of 20 years old. He's running in Formula 2 this year. He's third in points in that series and is the official reserve driver for Sauber. He has been a reserve driver for Andretti Formula E the past 2 years. He doesn't have a whole lot of time behind the wheel. I will state that, despite the fact that Sauber can't seem to score a point to save their you-know-whats. But either way, Maloney, finish out the Formula 2 year, but has already been in the building at Lola ABT preparing for the upcoming preseason testing that's going to be happening in early November in Valencia, Spain. So he's getting a jump start on it. 20-year-old kid with Lucas Degrassi, who's one of the few guys who has run the overwhelming majority of Formula E races in what will this coming up be the 11th year of the all-electric series. So, yeah, he's got a good mentor. There's no doubt about that. All right, so here's the deal. Oh, by the way, I'm seeing what Mr. Plow's saying on CW Live. I couldn't find it streaming on the CW app. It needs to be fixed. Well, yeah, I wish it could, but I actually uploaded the CW app onto my smart television as well and was told that you can't stream on the CW app the Xfinity Series race live unless you're willing to pay extra for it. It'll be available Sunday. Thanks. Appreciate the help, CW app. Got to pay for everything, man. Good grief. Our thoughts and our prayers go out to all the people that are affected by Hurricane Helene. We here in Alabama, we got pretty lucky. We only lost power up in the east central area of Alabama to about 1,500 to 2,000 customers, most of them in the county where I'm currently doing this broadcast. And most of that is back, if not all. Georgia got hammered. The Big Bend area of Florida around near Tallahassee and all that, they got hammered. And it's up in the Carolinas now and is starting to juke towards the west a little bit to begin to affect the areas over in the Rocky Mountains. To the point where I-40 eastbound, going in and around through Boone, where Appalachian State, going up to near Hendersonville, there is a portion of I-40 where the entire eastbound side slid off and went into the river. Think about that for a minute. A portion of I-40 is gone. And plus you got all the flooding. We've heard upwards of about 20 to 25 people passing away. And this is a mess. This thing was huge. From one side to the other, 450 miles. It was category 4 before it started to hit land and break down. And there's a whole lot of flooding out there. And I get it. Bristol Motor Speedway, Charlotte Motor Speedway, and others opened up campground areas for these people to be able to, have a place to go. But those campgrounds got hit hard too. So keep your thoughts and your prayers in for the southeastern part of the country, specifically Big Bend area of Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, and up into Tennessee while this thing continues to throw massive amounts of rain out there. Hopefully this thing will, as quickly as it did move, and it did move real fast. I mean, at one point in time, it was doing 30 to 35 miles per hour north and northeast as it hit landfall. And that's a good thing because you wanted this thing to get the heck out of Dodge as fast as it possibly can. We got a radar up in here, and it looks like what would be kind of the center of the remnants of Helene is kind of based a little bit north of Nashville. So that's how much of a juke to the west that this thing took. So it's a mess. Keep your thoughts and your prayers out there. And I know that a lot of power companies are sending crews from Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana and Arkansas, southern part of Florida, and they're working their way north, and they're going to go up into Georgia as well. And they're going to try and get all this power back on to all the people that have been affected by this. It will not affect what we do at Talladega next weekend. It certainly won't affect what's going on at Kansas this weekend for NASCAR. It will affect how they're going to get back, because a lot of them were probably planning on bringing I-40 back. Can't do that now. Probably going to have to drop all the way down to I-20, or you're going to have to cut up and go over and come around down I-77. I'm not sure which way they'll go, but either way, it's a mess. Yeah, Chi-Town Mark's been on that stretch of I-40. I have as well. It was very picturesque. Now, road's gone. It's going to take a while to build back up, too. So again, keep everybody in your thoughts and your prayers when it comes to that, and especially for those that lost their lives. We hate to see that and hear about that, but it is unfortunately part of the way that things go in this world. We can try and we can prepare as much as possible, but sometimes all the preparation in the world isn't going to stop what Mother Nature is going to throw at us. So we'll keep our thoughts and our prayers in on that. We'll talk to you Wednesday for Crossed Flags, and for this show, 2 weeks. Next weekend being Talladega, not going to be able to do it, but we'll miss you. And we'll talk about it a lot during the Cross Flags podcasts for the next couple of weeks. And we'll see you and talk to you again, once again, 2 weeks from now, college football permitting, right here on the Big Show edition of the Championship Racing Network. Y'all enjoy the racing. Be careful out there, and we'll talk to you again Wednesday, the next Wednesday, and 2 Saturdays from now. And who knows? Maybe I can get producer John back. Coach Matt, a little less confident. His season goes into November. See ya.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
This is where the classics live forever.
Here come the classics.
Keep it coming.
So good.
It's bigger, and bigger is better.
Yeah. You love it.
Yes, I love that.
This is going to be huge.
Non-stop.
Here we go.
This is WFEB 1340 AM, W265DV 100.9 FM Sylacauga, and WDNG 1450 AM, W236CQ 95.1 FM Anniston, 95.1 and 100.9